Yo, what's up guys? Alpha, and today I'm going to be doing a full in-depth deck breakdown of a deck that I've recently used to hit rank 1 with on the Arena ladder. As you can see from the screenshot here, I'm currently 24-3 with this deck, so it's been performing really well for me. And now before I get into it, there's going to be an MTG zone link down in the description. If you click on that, I'll have the full deck list there that you can import into Arena if you want to try the deck out for yourself. But anyway, with that all out of the way, this is my Rakdos Atraxa Anvil deck in Alchemy. Now obviously I've covered Anvil and Alchemy on the channel multiple times in the past. I definitely think it's one of the best decks in the format. But with the latest set, we get some really nice tools that give the deck a completely new dimension and help push it even further. And those new tools are Vat of Rebirth and Atraxa. Now before I get into it, I want to give a quick shout out to Omri. I'll leave his Twitter down in the description. He's a sick deck builder and player, also a riser for MTG Zone, and he's the one who gave me the idea for this deck because he's working on Anvil with Vat of Rebirth in Standard, and that was definitely the inspiration behind this list. So yeah, I'll definitely link his stuff in the description if you're interested. But anyway, we'll start off here by having a look at Vat of Rebirth. It's a 1-mana artifact, and whenever another artifact or creature you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you put an oil counter on it, and then you can pay 3 and tap it, and remove 4 oil counters to return target creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. Activate only as a sorcery. So this is so sick in the Anvil shell because it's so easy to trigger this and put oil counters on. We get oil counters whenever we activate the Anvil, whenever we sacrifice any of the 1/1s, whenever we sacrifice an artifact, whenever we sacrifice a blood token, and very importantly, whenever we sacrifice a treasure off Fable or Crucius as well, which is really sick because we can sacrifice the treasure to produce black mana, to put oil counters on it, and then we can pump that mana into the Vat of Rebirth. So it's actually pretty easy to get this online as early as turn 3 or 4, which is really huge. And then obviously the really powerful thing about Vat of Rebirth is you can do it repeatedly, right? So you just keep sacrificing stuff as part of your game plan. Anyway, that's what you want to be doing with Anvil, and then you can just keep bringing stuff back from the graveyard over and over again. So even if we're using this fairly, bringing back Bloodtithe Harvester is sick, bringing back Crucius is sick, bringing back Blood Artist is sick, but the obvious really powerful thing that we're doing with in this deck is with bringing back Atraxa. Now this is like the hotness right now in basically every format in Magic, and it's no different in Alchemy, you know, especially because it's a smaller format. This card is even more powerful in Alchemy. So this is a 7/7 flying Vigilance Death Touch lifelink, and when it enters the battlefield you reveal the top 10 cards of your library, and for each card type you put one of those into your hand. And in this deck we already have a pretty nice spread of card types, right? We have Vat of Rebirth and Anvil as artifacts, we have Harvester and Crucius as creatures, we have Brushstroke and Fable as enchantments, we obviously have a bunch of lands, and we have interaction, instant speed interaction in Go for the Throat and Abrade. So we're very consistently hitting 4, 5 or 6 cards off this every time it enters play. Obviously the body is huge as well, right? The fact it has vigilance and lifelink and flying as well. I mean, Death Touch is like, you know, an additional bonus as well, but flying vigilance lifelink on a 7/7 body closes the game out so quickly, stabilizes you completely against the aggro decks because they just can't attack into this. If the opponent's playing a red based deck, they have no cards to kill this, apart from Traumatic Prank can be an issue, but outside of that, Atraxa is just such a powerful effect. And then since we're using Vat of Rebirth to reanimate it, if the opponent kills it, it just goes back to the graveyard, we automatically get 1 extra oil counter on it, and then oftentimes we can just immediately activate Vat of Rebirth the next turn to bring back the Atraxa, get another 4, 5 or 6 cards, and then just win the following turn. And you know, the really powerful thing about this is the opponent has to kill it, right? If they have a removal spell like a Go for the Throat, they have to use it, but then that enables us to just bring it back with Vat of Rebirth again the following turn, get a bunch of extra cards. So this is such a powerful interaction, and because it's so easy for us to repeatedly get foil counters on Vat of Rebirth, we can just keep looping it over and over again. Now the other really nice thing about Atraxa in this particular build is we're already running a ton of discard outlets in the Anvil shell anyway, right? Bloodtithe Harvester and Sanguine Brushstroke both make blood tokens, which we can use to loot. The Chapter 2 of Fable of the Mirror Breaker allows us to discard it, and Crucius also allows us to discard it, and not only that, but it also allows us to tutor it. Now the issue with running Vat of Rebirth with only 1 big reanimation target, if you weren't able to run Crucius, is that it's very difficult to get that card into the graveyard, right? We don't have any Entomb effects, we don't have a way to dump Atraxa from our deck into the graveyard, but with Crucius, if we discard a 3-drop and name Ambitious, we're guaranteed to find the Atraxa. So if the Crucius then lives another turn, we can just discard it again, pick Expedient, and then it's in the graveyard for the Vat of Rebirth if we draw it, or if we have it already. And even if the Crucius dies, as long as we can find a Harvester, Brushstroke, or Fable, we have another way to ditch it to then bring back with the Vat of Rebirth anyway. We also have a ton of ways to make treasures in the deck. You know, we've got the tutor of Fable of the Mirror Breaker and Crucius as well, so if they get to live and we get to produce a bunch of treasures, we can also just potentially hardcast this as well. You know, we can produce off colours off the Mycosynth Gardens and Forsaken Crossroads as well, so we can sometimes just hardcast this off 2 treasures as well. But for the most part, since we already have a bunch of discard outlets in the deck, we're usually just going to be reanimating this off the Vat of Rebirth anyway. So this is kind of the new spice in the deck, and I think it really adds a completely new dimension to the deck, because oftentimes, you know, the tough matchups for Anvil were stuff like Jund Reanimator with Titan of Industry and Atraxa. I mean, Titan of Industry can destroy Vat of Rebirth, which can be a problem, but if you can reanimate Atraxa, that just goes way over the top of the Titan of Industry, because you get to refuel and you can just effectively block the Titan as well. So that's a matchup where reanimating Atraxa can completely blow the opponent out. Grixis midrange can also be tough because of stuff like Rusko allowing them to refuel, and now we have our own Rusko-esque trump card that we can trigger even faster because of the Vat of Rebirth. So Atraxa makes an already scary deck even more powerful and gives the deck a completely different angle of attack. You know, one of the other weaknesses of Anvil is that, or I guess 2 weaknesses, is that you can be slightly weak to the very fast aggro decks like Mono Red. Game 1, reanimating Atraxa is completely lights out against the aggro decks. Now, having said that, post-sideboard, I do tend to board out of the Atraxa game plan because it is a little bit too slow in those matchups, but if you can get it off quickly game 1, it stabilizes you there. And one of the other weaknesses of Anvil is it can take you a while to close games out, which can give the bigger decks more time to stabilize against you, and Atraxa just helps you close games out super fast as well, whilst also refueling your hand, so that if the opponent is playing a deck with something like a Farewell, you already have resources to be able to refuel. So this adds a completely new dimension to the deck and really helps push it over the edge from my experience. Then the rest of the deck, if you're familiar with Anvil, you're probably already aware of a lot of the cards in the deck. We've got Anvil and Brushstroke, which is kind of the core of the deck. You know, repeatedly producing 1/1s off the Anvil is really sick. We have a ton of ways to turn on the Anvil in blood tokens off the Harvester and the Brushstroke, treasure tokens off the Fable and the Crucius. And, you know, producing the 1/1s is obviously great at producing chump blockers, being able to get in for damage. Pairs very nicely with the Blood Artist at allowing the, you know, to drain the opponent out. Then Blood Artist, you know, is often the way that we win the game, allowing you to have really good reach, so you don't even need to connect in combat in order to beat the opponent. And then the additional damage you get by sacrificing blood tokens can also give you really good reach in the late game. Harvester, again, very nice at enabling the Anvil, but also gives us some additional removal. Harvester is also great with Vat of Rebirth because sacrificing it to kill a creature triggers the rebirth, as does the blood token, and it's also just a decent body to start getting in for damage with early as well. Then obviously Fable of the Mirror Breaker, one of the best cards in the format. The 2/2 is sick at giving you board presence. The treasures it generates is great with Vat of Rebirth, also great to be able to hardcast Atraxa, and we always have a ton of stuff to do with our mana in this deck anyway, so the treasures are always useful. The looting is just generally useful anyway. Obviously with Atraxa, it's another discard outlet to get it into the graveyard, but just, you know, helps smooth out your draws. And then Reflection is like an end game engine in itself. Being able to copy Blood Tithe Harvester gives you a removal spell every single turn. Being able to copy Blood Artist gives you a ton of drain. And if you manage to get 2 Reflections together, you can just repeatedly make copies of the other Reflection to just have a ton of attackers for the following turn. And then Crucius, just the best card in the format right now and fits perfectly well in this deck. You know, like I said, can help you tutor and pitch the Atraxa, can produce treasure tokens, which is great with the VAT, and great for hardcasting Atraxa, and again, you know, just gives you ramp to be able to play whatever you draw as well. So Crucius, really great at smoothing your draws and enabling you to set up the Atraxa VAT combo. Then the removal we've got is Forgo for the Throat 3 Abrade. Initially, I was running Mishra's Research Desk in place of Abrade, but I just felt like Forgo for the Throat wasn't enough for interaction right now. Being able to kill opposing Crucius before they get to activate is so important. And, you know, when I was running Research Desk, I would basically always board out of Research Desk and board into Abrade as additional removal. I feel like you do want a high amount of removal right now because there's a ton of decks in the format that have a lot of must-kill threats. The fact that Abrade can also kill artifacts is very relevant. First of all, against Rusko, because you can use it to take out the Midnight Clock. It's great in the mirror match at taking out opposing Oniko Anvils, and it's also great because it can take out Unlicensed Hearse and Viconia, which are the 2 main commonly played Graveyard Hate in the format. Now obviously, because we are running a small reanimator package, people will tend to bring in Graveyard Hate against you, but the fact we're already running Abrade in the main deck means we already have an answer to basically the only played Graveyard Hate in the format. So I do feel it's very important to be running extra removal. Now not running Research Desk, I thought might be a concern because it means that we're slightly less, you know, it's slightly less easy to get our engines online. But honestly, with Crucius, Fable, and Brushstroke, that's all you need. You know, especially Crucius is single-handedly so good at getting all your engines online. So you don't need that much stuff to get your Anvil and Brushstroke and stuff like that online. And I do feel like you do want the additional removal in the deck. The other really nice thing about how the main deck is set up is you're basically pre-sideboarded in all of the mid-range matchups, right? You know, stuff like Grixis, stuff like Jund. If the opponent's playing Reanimator, you do want to board in on Licensed Hearse, but any mid-range deck like the Mirror or against, you know, Grixis, for example, you're basically already pre-sideboarded. I don't sideboard at all unless I'm against a graveyard deck, Naya Revels, or an aggro deck, or a control deck. If you're against any mid-range deck, which is by far the most popular deck in the format right now, the main deck is already perfectly set up for that. Then in terms of the mana base, the main change I've made here is going up to 25 lands, and I think that's really important because missing your third land on curve so you can't cast Crucius Fable or Sanguine Brushstrike on turn 3 is an absolute disaster. And we have a ton of mana sinks, we have a ton of ways to smooth our hands out, so I like going up a land just to ensure that we can cast our 3 drops on curve, which is really nice. Blackcleave's Kips is a great addition to the deck, you know, just ensures we have a high density of dual lands so that we're never going to not have the colours that we need. Obviously, Takenuma and Sokenzan are free to run as one-offs. Forsaken Crossroads is another card that I really like running as a 4-of, even though we get new dual lands because the scry on this is very valuable. And then the new addition to the deck from the latest set is also a single copy of Mycosynth Gardens, which can copy an artifact. So typically, we're only really interested in using this to copy Onikal Anvil, which is really powerful. You can use it to copy Vat of Rebirth, but that's only really worth doing if the opponent is trying to kill the Vat. You know, in response, you can activate the Gardens to copy it, but having multiple copies of that isn't really that powerful because you can typically only really activate one of them each turn anyway. But Mycosynth Gardens is really nice as that 25th land that also provides you a mana sink to be able to copy the Onikal Anvil, but I wouldn't really be running more than one because having this, you know, if you keep a 2-land hand and Mycosynth Gardens is one of the 2, it stops you playing Anvil or Bloodtithe Harvester on 2, for example. So I like it as a one-off, but I wouldn't really run more than one. So that's the main deck. I'm really happy with it. You know, like I said, Anvil is already one of the best decks in the format, and getting to run this insanely powerful reanimation package just gives the deck a completely new angle of attack. And like I said, the main deck is basically pre-sideboarded against all the other mid-range decks in the format, which from my experience are the most popular decks. So you're basically pre-sideboarded against the most common decks in the format. And then speaking of the sideboard, you know, like I said, the only matchups where you really sideboard are against aggro. So against aggro, like I said, Atraxa and Vat is slightly too slow from my experience. You know, you can get Vat online very quickly, but having hands with Atraxa and no Vat is pretty awkward. So what I typically do is I'll board out of the 4 Atraxa and a couple of Vat and board into 3 Voltage Surge and 3 Grixis Command. Voltage Surge is obviously incredibly efficient removal spell, very good against stuff like Mono Red aggro, Mono Red Goblins, any other aggro deck in general. And then Grixis Command, you know, this was a slot that I was previously dedicating to Shieldred, but from my experience playing Shieldred out of the sideboard in Anvil against Mono Red specifically, either Mono Red aggro or Mono Red Goblins, the opponent always has a high density of stuff like Traumatic Prank and Brittle Blast, which just deals with the Shieldred immediately. And if the opponent does do something like Traumatic Prank your Shieldred, that puts you so far ahead that it's really hard to recover. Whereas Grixis Command is really good against them, and it's very difficult for them to interact with profitably as well, because you know, giving one of your creatures +2/+2 and lifelink really helps you stabilize in a lot of ways. Ton of their creatures have power 2 or less, so you can use this as a board sweeper, and you can also make them sacrifice their biggest creature as well. So Grixis Command, really, really good, firstly against Mono Red aggro, but especially against Mono Red Goblins, where they tend to go wide, which is generally the trickier matchup because they have engine cards that can help them pull ahead in the mid to late game, like Fable of the Mirror Breaker and Goblin Influx Array. So I much prefer Grixis Command, and the really powerful thing about it in this deck is you can also tutor it off the Crucius because we're cutting the Atraxa. So if we discard a 3-drop and name Ambitious, not only are we guaranteed to find the Grixis Command, but we also produce a treasure, which then allows us to ramp into the Grixis Command on turn 4. So Grixis Command and Voltage Surge has felt like a really, really good game plan switch against the aggro decks, which is really nice. Then against the Revels deck, so previously I was sideboarding Invoke Despair for that matchup. Now Invoke Despair was good, or I was previously main decking actually, but Invoke Despair was good in the past because it was good against the Revels deck, and it was also good against the mid-range decks. Now that we've got Vat of Rebirth and Atraxa, which is just absolutely insane in the mid-range matchups, I feel like Invoke Despair is only really good against the Revels deck, and if they don't have Revels, it's not even that good a card. So against the Revels life gain deck, I tend to board in Grixis Command as the top-end card, which is really good at, you can kill all of their life gain enablers like their Prosperous Innkeepers and their Lunarch Veterans, and then force them to sacrifice their Voice of the Blessed or Trellisara. So this is a really good top-end that is great whether they have Revels or not. And because we can struggle if they do have a Revels, I'm also sideboarding 3 Knight of Dusk Shadow, which basically shuts off the most powerful and threatening part of their deck in the life gain package, right? The reason that Revels is so good against us is because they can buffer their life total off the Lunarch Veterans and start buffing their Voice of the Blessed and Trellisara. And Knight of Dusk Shadow just shuts that off. So even if they have Revels, we don't have a way to kill it, but it just shuts off the most powerful part of their deck. And then we can also just use the Grixis command to sweep their board as well. So this has felt really nice, and I don't really feel it's worth running Invoke Despair anymore just for the Revels package, because that and Atraxa is so good against all the other mid-range decks. Then I've also got 3 copies of Unlicensed Hearse here. So this is predominantly here for the Jund Reanimator matchup. Like I said, Titan of Industry is still an issue, even though it is a mid-range deck, because they can use their Titan to kill the Vat of Rebirth, which is an issue. So we do want to have a decent number of Unlicensed Hearse to stop their fastest starts, because if we can shut off their Titan of Industry in the early game, we typically tend to beat them in the longer game, right? Previously, them hardcasting Titan of Industry was an issue, but since we have Vat of Rebirth and Atraxa that just goes way over the top of the opponent, that's much less of an issue now. So as long as we can stop their early reanimation, that's the most important thing. And then we can also bring this in against the Oracle of the Alpha decks, or, the Cyber Siphoner decks that are looking to bring stuff back from the graveyard. And I don't mind bringing in, 1 or 2 copies of this in the mirror match as well if the opponent's playing Anvil with Vat and Atraxa, but we already have a Braid that can kill opposing Vats, so I don't think you really need to be bringing in more than 1 or 2 in the mirror match. But like I said, very important for the Gen Reanimator matchup. And then finally, we've got 3 copies of Obnixilis. So this is here pretty much exclusively for control decks, which aren't very popular right now, to be honest. But if you do face a control deck that's running like Farewell and Divine Purge, that can be a very tricky matchup in general. But having Obnixilis basically just bypasses that. They really struggle to beat Resolve Planeswalker. And with the casualty, you obviously get to put 2 Planeswalkers into play. So, thankfully, Farewell and Divine Purge decks aren't super popular right now, but having Obnixilis in the sideboard does give you a good tool to fight those matchups as well. In the past, I used to bring Obnixilis in the mirror match against other Anvil decks, but since we now have Atraxa and Vat of Rebirth, which just goes way over the top, I don't think you really need Obnixilis in the mirror. So this is here pretty much exclusively for control, which, like I said, isn't that popular, but you do want to have tools, because Farewell and Divine Purge can just completely destroy your deck if you don't have something like an Obnixilis post-sideboard. So that's the deck overall. I'm super happy with it. Obviously I've been very high on Anvil in the format in general, and having access to this reanimation package that already fits perfectly in the deck, because it's so easy to trigger Vat of Rebirth with the Anvil shell, and the Anvil was already running a ton of discard outlets, so it's very easy to get Atraxa in the graveyard. It just gives the deck a completely new angle of attack and improves it even more. So this is, in my opinion, the best deck in the format right now. Obviously, the metagame could shift to target it a little bit more, but the deck operates on so many angles, so even if the opponent does have graveyard hate, you can just beat them with the regular Anvil game plan anyway. So that's a deck. If you've got any questions or comments about it at all, definitely let me know in the comments. Next time, I've got some gameplay that I was playing with this deck, so you guys can see it in action. Just got 5 matches on the ladder. Like I said, if you've got any questions at all, give me a shout in the comments, and I hope you enjoy the gameplay. Big up. Okay, sweet. Here we go. Okay, so we're going second here. And yeah, this hand looks good. We get a Scry on turn 1, into either Anvil or a Braid on 2, into Crucius on turn 3. Okay, another land off the top isn't what we want to see, but we do get to Scry here off the crossroads, which is nice. Okay, definitely bombing the land, but yeah, having Crucius as top end is really nice. If it can survive, it can just smooth our hand out, even if we are slightly flooded out. So Shipwreck Marsh from the opponent, I was going to say could be Grixis, but the Dross Pits makes me think it's probably not, and I don't think Grixis would run Consider either, so I think we're probably against Dimir here. If I was, if I thought the opponent could be on Grixis, I don't think I would go for Harvester here. I think I would just pass with a Braid up to be able to kill an opposing Crucius, because letting Crucius trigger is really, really bad against Grixis. Okay, thankfully, I think my suspicions were right in that we're against Dimir rather than Grixis, but like I said, I think holding open a Braid on turn 2 if you're on the draw is much better against Grixis, because you don't let them get a Crucius trigger. Letting the opponent trigger Crucius, particularly if they're using it to tutor a top end card, is really bad. Okay, so opponent uses go for the throat on Crucius, that's fine. We've already let it fix our hand, we've already let it ramp. Okay, Vat of Rebirth is a pretty nice draw here, but I don't think I'm going to go for it. I think I'm going to go for the Brushstroke here. Again, if I still thought the opponent could be on Grixis, I could see an argument to going Anvil, activate, and then hold open, go Anvil, Vat of Rebirth, and then hold open a Braid, but I think the opponent is just on Dimir from what I've seen so far. It could be an Oracle of the Alpha deck potentially, so I just want to be mana efficient here, get Anvil and Brushstroke online, and then we can, get Vat in play next turn. And even though we don't have a Atraxa, using Vat to get back Blood Tithe Harvester or Crucius is still really, really sick, and it's so quick for us to get Vat online, particularly once we have Anvil. Okay, Legislator from the opponent. So yeah, I imagine the opponent is probably on an Oracle of the Alpha deck from what we've seen so far. Either way, we get to Braid the Legislator here, and we get to get the Vat of Rebirth in play, which is really nice. Going to attack him with the 1/1 here, and then I'm going to play out the land. I think, there is an argument to holding on to it in case we draw another Crucius, because we do want to use this we do want to hold on to this go for the throat to be able to kill a Shieldred. But I think that's fine, right? You know, being able to play the extra land here enables us to kill a Shieldred if they go 4th land into Shieldred. And now we've got Vat of Rebirth ticking up. We can start pumping our mana into that to get back Crucius or Bloodtithe Harvester as well. So I think we're in a pretty good spot here. Okay, Tasha. I mean, that's not great because... Okay, they choose not to go for the minus, which is kind of nice. I was kind of scared of them going for the minus because them having Harvester or Crucius is a bit annoying here. I mean, either way, Tasha is kind of frustrating here because if they get to the ultimate and they -6, they can hit Atraxa, which is an issue, but we do have a lot of potential options here. So I'm going to cycle the blood tokens twice, which does enable us to activate the Vat of Rebirth this turn because we can sacrifice one of the Anvil tokens here, get the 4th counter on the Vat of Rebirth, and the opponent's already down to 12, so we're chipping away at their life total. And I'm going to get the Crucius into play here, and we get to trigger it. I'm going to, we've already got a backup go for the throat, so I'm going to activate it now. Okay, we hit another Crucius, which isn't great. I mean, we can pitch that to try and find an Atraxa. Okay, they invoke Despair, sure. That's not too bad. Right, we get another Blood Artist trigger here. Sacrificing the Brushstroke really isn't a big deal. You know, Brushstroke is very good at kind of blanking Invoke Despair in a way. And now we also get to attack the Tasha with Crucius as well. So we get to keep them off the ultimate here, which is a pretty big deal. So getting another Vat of Rebirth isn't ideal here. I think I could potentially see an argument to holding on to it. To pitch to Crucius next turn. Having 2 Vat of Rebirths in play isn't generally that great because it's kind of hard to find the mana to have both of them, but I think I'm going to play the second one out here anyway, just in case the opponent has a way to kill it. I mean, in Dimir colours they probably don't, but now we get to pitch the other Crucius to find an Atraxa. Now the slight issue here is if the opponent does kill my Crucius here, we don't have another discard outlet for it. Okay, there's a Shieldred, that's fine. So them not killing Crucius is really sick here because that enables us to pitch the Atraxa next turn. I'm going to kill the Shieldred here before they draw off the Consider because we could very well win by draining the opponent out here, and letting them draw with Shieldred in play obviously would gain them 2 extra life. The other argument I could see here is maybe, pitching cards to get treasures to hardcast the Atraxa, but... we're 2 turns away from that, so I don't think that's a good game plan in this particular spot anyway. So I think I'm just going to run out the second Anvil here. That'll enable me to get more counters on the Vat of Rebirth. Just trying to figure out what options we've got. We definitely want to attack the Tasha again with the Crucius here. We just want to keep that off the ultimate for as long as we can, because we could either win by draining the opponent out or trying to reanimate the Atraxa here. So I'm going to activate... play the second Anvil, activate it, get 2 more Anvil tokens, get 2 more Vat tokens, and then I'm going to activate one of these Vats now as well to get back another creature from the graveyard, and then we can go for the Atraxa next turn. So we can get back a Harvester here, which is nice. That gives us another Blood token, and another threat on board, which allows us to, again, keep the opponent off the Tasha ultimate. And, we've got the Blood Artist and 2 Anvils online. We could very well just drain the opponent out before we reanimate the Atraxa anyway. Okay, Rusko is, could buy the opponent some time, could stop us draining them out slightly. Okay, they are an Oracle of the Alpha deck, so makes sense from what we've seen so far. Okay, opponent also pluses the Tasha here. But now we can just reanimate the Atraxa, which is, going to pull us so far ahead. It's going to be really hard for them to stop with what they've got so far. One thing you do need to be wary of in this deck, though, specifically against Tasha decks, is if you pitch Atraxa to the graveyard and it's your only creature, they can just play Tasha and -2 in order to immediately reanimate it, which is a big issue. So always consider that if you're against a Tasha deck. So pretty good hit here. We get to pick 5 cards, which is obviously insane. I think we'll just go for Harvester and Anvil here. And then we've got a decent number of options here. I think we want to get another Anvil in play. Opponent's already at 5, so I think we can just win here off the Blood Artist with the Anvils. So just trying to think what we want to do here. I mean, I'm happy to attack with both the 1/1s because they're guaranteed to die to the Tasha triggers, which will just drain the opponent down to 3. Trying to think whether we want to attack with the Blood Tithe Harvester or just activate its ability. I mean, we can already tell from, Arena's giving away that the opponent doesn't have anything that they can play because it's giving away priority here. So just going to attack with the 2 1/1s, which puts the opponent down to 3. And then, we have more than lethal here, right? We can play the second Harvester out. We can activate the first Harvester that we've got, kill the Rusco. And then that will just, put them down to 1. Then we can just activate the Anvil. So yeah, we had way more than lethal here. And we had an Atraxa in play. So, this just shows the power of... Anvil was already a powerful strategy. And then getting Atraxa in play on top of that is just absolutely nuts. So, interesting whether we want to sideboard here. I mean... They are kind of playing a mid-range deck, and typically I don't, we're basically pre-sideboarded against mid-range decks. Now, against an Oracle of the Alpha deck, there is an argument to bringing in Unlicensed Hearst if the opponent could potentially be running Cyber Siphoner, but some of the Oracle Rusco decks don't run Siphoner, so I'm not going to sideboard in Hearst until I see it. So this hand's great, as long as we can hit our 3rd land drop, which I'm pretty confident we can because we're going 2nd and we're running 25 lands. One of the reasons why I wanted to go up to 25 lands is so you can confidently keep a 2-lander and have good, be pretty confident that you're going to find your 3rd land on curve. And we did, which is sick. So we're going to run out the Harvester here, and then if the opponent passes with mana open, I think I'll go for Fable because them killing Crucius before it triggers is pretty bad. If they tap out, then I think I'm just going to go for the Crucius because, getting a Crucius trigger immediately is sick. And since we already have Vat of Rebirth, getting Crucius into play here and pitching another 3-drop allows us to tutor for the Atraxa. And we already have a blood token, so even if the Crucius dies here, we have a discard outlet for the Atraxa already. So, and I don't think Dimir really has good ways to deal with artifacts, so... I think we can just go Crucius here, pitch the other Crucius to find an Atraxa, and then the other great thing about Crucius with Vat of Rebirth is producing the treasure tokens here is really sick because we can activate the treasures to produce black mana to not only trigger the Vat of Rebirth to get it to 4 counters, but also to then pump that mana into the Vat of Rebirth. So Shielded is obviously a bit of a concern here, but if we can reanimate Traxa, that just goes way over the top of Shielded anyway, so... Okay, interesting what we want to do here. We have a number of options. We could potentially try and bait the opponent into blocking with the Shieldred and then kill it with the Abrade, but I don't know if it's worth throwing away the Crucius in order to do that. I think I'm just going to go to the end step, ditch the Atraxa, and now we should be able to just reanimate the Atraxa next turn, right? We can either attack with the 2/2, or if they attack with the Shielded, we can just block with it. We can activate both of the treasure tokens. Oh, okay, bind the I thought they were going after my graveyard for something else then. I thought they had like a Cling to Dust or something. Okay, they do get Crucius from my graveyard, but again, I'm not too fussed about that. If we can reanimate Atraxa, that just goes way over the top of Shieldred. So, this is another big advantage of having Atraxa here. Typically, Anvil couldn't beat Shieldred unless you had to go for the throat, but Atraxa is just so much more powerful. So set a stop during the second main phase here so that we can kill their Crucius before they get to trigger it. Also puts another counter on the Vat. So now we're just guaranteed to be able to reanimate Atraxa here, which is sick. I don't think I want to loot off Fable because my hand's pretty decent anyway, and we don't want to give them extra Shieldred triggers. I'm going to attack with the 2/2 here. They might not block because we've just shown them a Braid. Okay, they don't block, so that's nice. We get to keep the 2/2 around. Now we can just sacrifice these 2 treasures to get up to 4 all counters, pump the mana that we get off these treasures into the Vat, and then we get to reanimate the Atraxa here. So even though the opponent has a Shielded in play, I think we're just going to go way over the top of that. So we get a land. I think we've already got a Fable, so we just want to go for Brushstroke and drain the opponent out, and then we get an Atraxa and an Anvil as well. So that was a sick hit. I think we're just going to run out the Brushstroke here to start, swing the life total race more in our favour, although, I think actually I prefer going for Anvil and the Harvester here, because even though that does give the opponent a Legislator trigger, we can start putting blockers into play, so even if the opponent does find a go for the throat, we'll be able to have chump blockers for the Shieldred. But I could see, it's close, I could very well see an argument for going for Brushstroke instead there, because it doesn't give them the connive on the Legislator, but it's slightly more mana efficient for us to do that. And now we can just play a bunch of Brushstrokes next turn and use the Harvester to kill the Shieldred. That's the other advantage of going for the Harvester there, is that we can just get two Brushstrokes in play here and just get the Shieldred off the board immediately next turn. So now the reflection flips, Fable flips into reflection, and we can just play 2 brushstrokes here. You know, we could reanimate the Atraxa again, but I actually think, you know, it's better to start closing the game out here and get shielded off the board. So we do give them another connive off the shredder, but, you know, that doesn't really matter at this point. To be honest, we are at 5, and they do have a 4 power flyer, but we're going to start getting a ton of life back here because of the Blood Artists. And we can obviously just reanimate the Atraxa next turn. And I think if the opponent does attack with shredder, they're probably just dead on board, because considering the amount of pressure we have here. So we get to attack him for 6, and then we get to activate the Anvil as well. I think we can just sacrifice a blood token here because we don't have the Harvester in play anymore. And then we're back up to 10. We can pitch a land here, and we can also just reanimate Atraxa again next turn. So yeah, opponent's going to need something really good here, like just a sweeper is basically their only out, I think. You know, maybe a malicious malfunction. Wow, they bind to secrecy and Atraxa. I mean, I think that's just too slow, right? They probably should have gone for a shielded... Oh no, they can't use Bind Secrecy out of their own graveyard, so I guess that makes sense, but I very much doubt they're going to get an additional turn here. Although having said that, they do get a card off the Bind. Okay, they got a Necrotic Rune, so that is a removal spell, and... okay, they pitched the Atraxa, so they must have drawn something for this turn, maybe? Maybe they drew an additional removal spell. Wow, they attack. I mean, I guess that's the only way of running this game, so it makes sense, but I think we've just got too much pressure here, especially with the additional brushstroke. And like I said, we get to reanimate the Atraxa here anyway, and since we have 3 Blood Artists, even if they have a go for the throat, we're going to be gaining a ton of life back off the Blood Artist anyway. Yeah, okay, opponent just scoops it up. Sweet, we got that. Nice. Okay, so we're on the play here. And yeah, this hand looks great. We've got that and Atraxa and a way to pitch it as well. So yeah, very happy with this hand. Get to play that on 1, Bloodtithe Harvester on 2, Fable on 3. And then, you know, you can obviously pitch the Atraxa to the Fable. Harvester, you know, already gives us the blood token to start triggering the VAT. And, you know, as long as we can loot into Anvil or Brushstroke or Crucius, then we can start getting the VAT online pretty quickly. So... opponent's considering the mulligan here. Definitely just going to slam the Vat of Rebirth on turn 1 here. And then see what the opponent's on. Okay, Swamp Passer. So could be a number of matchups here. Second Vat of Rebirth isn't really that great, you know. Obviously it's good if the opponent has like an Abrade for the first one, for example. But you don't really want to be drawing it in multiples. Or you don't really want to have multiples in play. Okay, interesting. So Shambling Gas from the opponent, definitely don't want to attack into that because we don't want to ramp them to 4 mana on turn 2. You know, that could enable them to play Shielded on 3. Could also just kill the Harvester. And, you know, we don't really know what the opponent's on. They could play like a Brushstroke, which we'd want to be able to interact with the Harvester. So here, I think I'm just going to pitch the Atraxa and the VAT. Like I said, you know, we don't really want the second VAT in play, really. So at this point, you know, now we've got 2 creatures in play. I think we're fine to attack. You know, we could give the opponent a treasure. They could use it to kill either creature, but we are a deck that wants to get in for damage whenever we can. And at this point, you know, again, giving them a treasure could enable them to ramp into Invoke Dispel, which could be an issue, but I don't just want to sit back and do nothing, particularly when we have this 2-2 in play, right? You want to start getting treasures to ramp us. I'm not going to not attack with the 2-2 just because the opponent has a Shambling Blast as a blocker here. So now we have a bunch of artifacts in play, right? It should be very easy for us to trigger the Vat of Rebirth. Okay, so Shielded is a bit annoying, but we can kill that with Harvester plus a Braid or double Harvester here. I do think I probably want to keep one of the Harvesters around to copy with Reflection. So I mean, I'm pretty happy to just kill the Shieldred with the Abrade here. Then we get to attack him with both. We get to make an additional treasure here. And then we can already trigger the Vat of Rebirth because we can crack one of these blood tokens to loot away a land. And then sacrifice 2 of the treasure tokens to put the last 2 counters on. And just reanimate the Atraxa here, which is going to be very difficult for the opponent to beat. You know, getting a turn 4... maybe this is a turn 5 Atraxa. I'm not actually sure. I can't remember what turn it is. But getting Atraxa in play when we're this far ahead on board is going to be so hard for the opponent to beat, I think. So I think we're going to go for Brushstroke here. We just want to start closing the game out, and then we can go for Crucius and Anvil as well. And then... we could play Takanuma into another VAT, but I could very well see myself wanting to discard this VAT to a Crucius anyway, so just going to go for the Mountain and then see what the opponent does here. Okay, they do have a City Stalker, but that's, you know, that's not going to be enough. So I think we'll just pitch the Crucius here. I want to get Brushstroke in play just to close the game out as quickly as possible, you know, give the opponent less outs. We're already so far ahead that Brushstroke just dealing the extra chip damage should make a pretty big difference here, I think. So we'll get the Brushstroke in play, and then that will get the Blood Artist in play, obviously, start dealing additional chip damage. Then we can just copy the Bloodtithe Harvester with the Reflection. If they have a removal spell, so be it. You know, if they had to go for the Throat, I assume they just use it on the Atraxa by now already. And then we can just use the Bloodtithe Harvester to kill the City Stalker. Gets us a VAT trigger, gets us a Blood Artist trigger. Yeah, opponent just scoops it up. So, got a really nice VAT start there. Again, looks like the opponent's on Mono Black Midrange, so we're pre-sideboard against Midrange. We don't really have to think about sideboarding here, you know. Specifically against Mono Black, I can't think of anything that would make me want to sideboard. You know, the only mid-range decks where we ever do sideboard is decks that use the graveyard, for example, like the Jund Reanimator deck, using Assemble from Parts to get back the Titan of Industry. In that matchup, Unlicensed Hearse is very important. And the reason why I'm running 3 is just because the main way that we win against the Jund Reanimator deck is shutting off their early reanimation, right? If we can force them to, you know, if we can shut off their graveyard, it shuts off Jarsteel, it shuts off their early Titan of Industry. Now, previously with Anvil, them hardcasting Titan was a big issue, but now since we have access to reanimating Atraxa, that's really not much of an issue because we can normally get Atraxa before they can get to a hardcast Titan, and that just goes way over the top of what they're trying to do. So typically, as long as we can shut off their graveyard with Hearse, we're good in that matchup. And the reason why we can get away with running 3, you know, Unlicensed Hearse is a card that is pretty bad in multiples because the second and third copies don't really do anything extra. But we have so many discard outlets, from the Blood Tokens to Fable of the Mirrorbreaker to Crucius, that drawing multiples really isn't much of an issue because we can always discard them. And if the opponent does have a way to kill the first one, having a backup one as a second isn't that much of a big deal anyway. But here in this matchup against Mono Black, I feel like the main deck is very well set up anyway, you know. Again, we're not 100% sure exactly what configuration the opponent's on. There could be a ton of stuff they're running. They could be on Invoke Despair, they could be on the Liana, they could be on, you know, Sanguine Brushstroke and Meathook Massacre, because they are running Shambling Gar, so I assume they're running some sort of sacrifice package, but we didn't really get to see too much of their deck. So this hand is obviously pretty sketchy because we have so many lands, but we have VAT and Crucius, which can sometimes carry it. Now, this is a very risky keep because if we keep drawing lands and the opponent has a removal spell for Crucius straight away, then this is a bit of an issue, but I think we can draw out of it. We already have the Scry off the Crossroads available, and, you know, we're already starting to draw other stuff here, right? So if the opponent does tap out here on turn 3, we're just going to slam the Crucius. If the opponent does hold open removal, wow, they miss a land drop. That's obviously good for us. Since they have access to something, I could go for the Throat here. I think I'm just going to go for the Brushstroke, try and bait out a removal spell if we can. If they do, we start getting counters on the VAT, which we can then use to reanimate stuff. Okay, they had cut down, so maybe it's better to go for Crucius, but again, they could have cut down and go for the Throat, right? If they're missing land drops, that means they have a hand full of stuff, full of good stuff anyway, so I think I like holding on to Crucius for now until they tap out. Although, I mean, I think I'm just going to go for it now. We could wait, but I think I'm just going to go for it because the only other option is just play Anvil, and I don't think that's particularly strong. Okay, it doesn't look like the opponent had go for the Throat, so I'm not sure what they have in hand. And we've just seen Rafine's Tower, so maybe they're I don't know what the blue and white man is for, because considering we only saw black last game. Okay, Phyrexian Tower is interesting. I mean, if I was the opponent, I wouldn't keep in Phyrexian Tower against an Anvil deck just because we're so good at dealing direct damage, but maybe they feel like they can outgrind us. Maybe they have a lot of life gain in their deck. You know, we've already seen Shieldred, but yeah, we'll see how things plan out. I mean, we're already in a great spot because VAT is one of the best cards in the deck overall. You know, even if we don't have Atraxa, we can use VAT here already to bring back Blood Artist, which is really strong considering we already have Anvil. If the opponent kills Crucius, we can just use VAT to get that back immediately. So VAT is, you know, even though it's obviously nuts with the okay, they're running Brushstroke, so it does look like they have a decent amount of interaction. But yeah, even without Atraxa, VAT is such a powerful card in Anvil. You know, even if there wasn't a big creature that was worth cheating to play like an Atraxa, I think I would still probably be running VAT in the deck anyway, just because it's so good with Crucius, it's so good with Bloodtithe Harvester. Yeah, in general, it's just a really, really strong card in this archetype. So, can run out the Harvester here, then we can use the Crucius to... I mean, we could just go for the Vat of Rebirth this turn, actually. I think I might go for that because getting Blood Artist in play, you know, the opponent has a Phyrexian Tower, which is dealing them damage. We're also dealing them a bunch of direct damage ourselves anyway, so I think I'm going to go for the Vat of Rebirth here. I was considering holding open mana to copy the Oniko Anvil with Mycosynth Gardens, which I guess we could still do... Oh, no, because we're going to pitch the land to Crucius here, so we're not able to copy the Anvil this turn, but I feel like this is a better line, getting the Blood Artist in play, because... You know, it's an additional threat the opponent kind of has to deal with, and if they do, then we can potentially just activate it again the following turn, because, you know, that is going to tick up so quickly now we have a bunch of permanents in play. Okay, they do have Meathook Massacre, but they're going to take 4 here off the Blood Artist triggers. That's going to immediately put another 4 counters on the VAT. So yeah, using that every turn is quite important, because if we had chosen to use Mycosynth Gardens copying Anvil instead, we would have 8 counters on the VAT, and you know, you can only activate it once per turn, right? So I think it was a good idea to use that wherever you can. You know, it's generally the best use of your mana if you have access to it. So interesting what we want to go for here. I think I'm just going to go for the Blood Artist to close the game out quicker, because we could go for Crucius, but I feel like at this point the opponent's so low on the life total that we're basically just guaranteed to win here anyway, right? So we could cycle both the blood tokens here, but that only puts the... Oh, I guess they draw off the... Yeah. So the opponent draws off the arena, so we could have, you know, used the blood tokens to kill them there anyway, but didn't end up mattering. Managed to get there anyway. Sick. Okay, so we're going second here. And yeah, this hand looks decent. We got Vat of Rebirth into go for the throat on 2, which, you know, on the draw, if we're against another Crucius deck, that's very nice to be able to potentially kill Crucius before they get to activate it. And then Vat of Rebirth with Sanguine Breaststroke is also pretty nice, because Blood Artist is often a must-kill threat, and if the opponent does kill it, that gives us a good target in the graveyard for Vat of Rebirth, and we also get the Blood token, which helps put more oil counters on the Vat as well, so... Okay, interesting. So the opponent leads on a Blood Tithe Harvester here. Okay, and we draw a Harvester of our own, which is interesting. Now, since we, you know, the opponent's obviously on a Rakdos deck, so I'm going to hold open go for the throat for Crucius here. Not going to choose to play the Harvester, because killing Crucius before they get to activate it for the first time is really important. Okay, interesting. So they attack first. Still going to wait before playing the go for the throat just to see if they play Crucius. Okay, the fact they didn't means I'm happy to use go for the throat here. Now, they could be slow rolling the Crucius in their hand, but, you know, if they play Crucius on turn 4... That's not a big deal, and I do want to develop myself. Okay, interesting. So they were holding on to an Abrade to kill the VAT, which is slightly annoying because VAT is very good in these mid-range matchups, even when we don't have Atraxa. Okay, wow, that was a sick draw, though. So now we can get Crucius into play, and I think... interesting what we want to discard here. I kind of want the 4th land, and so I think I'm going to pitch one of these Brushstrokes here, and I think I'm going to go for Lesser, go for Expedient here, because if we still had the VAT, I would definitely find Atraxa by going Ambitious, but Atraxa without VAT isn't that good. Now, there's a chance that, you know, it might be right to just get Atraxa and pitch it to the graveyard so that VAT of the Rebirth is a good draw and instantly reanimates stuff, but considering we don't have VAT anymore, I think it's better to just try and find something else. Okay, interesting. So I think I'm going to go for the Sanguine Brushstroke and then go for the Throat the Blood Tithe Harvester here. You know, the obvious weakness of going Sanguine Brushstroke here is the opponent can immediately kill the Blood Artist with the Blood Tithe Harvester, so that's why I'm firing off the go for the Throat here, just so the opponent can't kill the Blood Artist that easily. And we have a second go for the Throat spare. You know, if we only had one go for the Throat, I'm not sure that would be the best play, because that would leave us kind of soft to something like a Shieldred, for example, but since we have the backup, I'm fairly happy to do that. Okay, nice. So that forces them to use a removal spell on the Blood Artist. They've only got one card left in their hands. Oh wow, it is a Corpse Appraiser though. So that does allow them to, you know, refuel essentially. Okay, so the fact they hit 2 lands in addition to whatever they got might mean that whatever they fetched wasn't that powerful. You know, there's a chance they could always hit 3 lands, but we'll see. Okay, Fable. So that is pretty good for the opponent, obviously. So imagine they attack here. Now, there is potentially an argument to taking the block because, you know, Reflection copying Corpse Appraiser is an issue, but I think I would rather save the Harvester to kill the Reflection if possible, and go for the Throat stops them getting ahead on mana as well. Oh wow, okay, that's a great draw. But yeah, I could potentially see an argument for trading with the Corpse Appraiser there, but like I said, you know, keeping the Harvester alive here basically forces the opponent to find a piece of removal, because otherwise we can just kill their Reflection once it flips with the Harvester. And, you know, Corpse Appraiser without a Reflection isn't really that, you know, it's just a 3/3 once it's on the battlefield. Vat of Rebirth is pretty nice, you know. Now I'm kind of thinking maybe I should have pitched the Atraxa, but we wouldn't have had the second go for the Throat if I'd done that, so... Okay, they do kill the Crucius, but we get to keep the Harvester alive, which means that we do have an answer to Reflection next turn. And obviously having the Vat is huge here as well, because we can start, you know, even without Atraxa, just reanimating Crucius or Blood Artist or Blood Tithe Harvester is pretty good. Okay, they did draw a removal spell as well, which kind of sucks. Okay, that's not a bad draw though. So now we can go Vat into Anvil. That does unfortunately mean that we don't have an immediate way to kill the Reflection next turn, which is a bit of a concern. You know, if we'd have been able to activate Vat this turn, I probably would have done that and got back Blood Tithe Harvester this turn so that we can then kill Reflection before it untaps, because they can just start potentially copying the Corpse Appraiser here, which is a bit of an issue. But yeah, if we can find a piece of removal off the top, that would be ideal. You know, another Abrade or go for the Throat to kill the Reflection. I mean, them copying Corpse Appraiser once is pretty bad for us, but not the end of the world. Like, we're basically just trying to find a way to kill Reflection here, because Vat of Rebirth is going to be able to pull us ahead. Oh wow, they have a Crucius as well. That's kind of scary. But yeah, I mean, Vat of Rebirth is a pretty good engine for us. Okay, Anvil is an interesting one here. So I'm going to activate the Anvil, crack the Blood token to get 2 1/1s into play, and then we can activate the Vat of Rebirth here. And honestly, I feel like at this point the opponent's definitely ahead on card advantage, so I'm just going to try... Now we've drawn a second Anvil, I'm just going to try and switch modes here and try and drain the opponent out, because Blood Artist plus 2 Anvils is really sick. They do get to obviously get the Corpse Appraiser. The other thing is, since they're going to copy the Corpse Appraiser there, it was quite important that we picked out the creature we wanted that turn, because otherwise Corpse Appraiser can obviously exile it from the graveyard. So, but yeah, I mean, I still, like, even though we're definitely going to start falling behind in terms of card advantage, the opponent's already down at 10, and Blood Artist plus 2 Anvils is going to start draining them out pretty quickly here. Oh, interesting. So they keep one blocker back, which makes sense. Otherwise, we could just start attacking for free and getting in for even more damage. Just going to block the... Well, chump block the Crucius and activate the Anvil, because we'd kind of want to activate the Anvil every turn cycle anyway, just to deal as much damage as possible. Because, like I said, at this point, our game plan is to just drain them out. Okay, they do have another Fable, but again, that's kind of slow card advantage. I mean, they do get to activate Crucius as well. Wow, they don't... Okay, so whatever they've got in hand must be pretty valuable if they don't activate Crucius. So interesting. Fable's an interesting draw. I mean... We can potentially bring back the Crucius here if we can get the opponent to block the 1/1. So we'll lead on attacking with the 1/1 here. See what the opponent does. I think they're kind of forced to block because they are at a fairly low life total here. So that puts the second oil counter on the Vat of Rebirth. And then we can sacrifice the first token, which will drain them for 1 and get them a Blood Artist trigger as well. And now the opponent's down to 2, so they're basically just dead to only cult Anvil activations next turn, even if they can kill the Blood Artist here. You know, even if they get a Shieldred in play, I still don't know if that'll be good enough to save them. Oh, okay, Atraxa is an interesting draw. I mean, unfortunately, if they kill the Crucius here, we don't have another way to pitch the Atraxa here, but either way, the opponent's at 2, right? They have to kill the Blood Artist first here, but we still, you know, we can still deal them 2 damage off the only cult Anvils that we've got in play because of the treasure that we create off the Crucius. So, you know, even if they kill Blood Artist and play a Shieldred here, I think we can still win on upkeep, right? With the Anvils. So, even though the opponent's pretty head on card advantage, we managed to just pivot and switch to draining them out. So, I think we should get there. Unless the opponent has, like... you know, Shieldred into a way to draw multiple cards here. Okay, they do have Bloodtithe Harvester, but I mean, that doesn't even work as an out to Blood Artist, right? Because they can copy the Harvester, activate it, but then activating it to kill the Blood Artist triggers Blood Artist twice, right? Because we get the death trigger off the copy and the death trigger off the Blood Artist. Wow, they go after Crucius. I mean, that's definitely going to kill. I mean, either way, whatever they choose to kill here is going to drain them out of the Blood Artist. Yeah, okay, sweet, we got there. Nice. So sideboarding here, I mean, you know, the main deck is basically pre-sideboarded against mid-range, specifically against Grixis as well, so definitely just going to run it back here. I honestly can't think of any tech in the Grixis deck that would make me want to sideboard in anything. You know, again, the only card that I really bring in against some mid-range decks is Unlicensed Hearse, you know, if they're reanimating, but Grixis doesn't tend to run any sort of any stuff like that, really. And, you know, the one big concern from Grixis, other than Shieldred, was always Rusko, but we have, you know, 3 Abrades in the main deck which can take out the Midnight Clock. We have a ton of ways to gain life, and we just have Atraxa which goes way over the top. You know, typically if I was running just pure Anvil, I would sometimes struggle against Rusko because, you know, it would obviously gain them a bunch of life back to stop us draining them out, and then it would just completely refuel them in terms of card advantage. But we have Atraxa that basically does the same thing, but even faster, right? It's much easier to get Vat of Rebirth online reanimating Atraxa than it is for the opponent to get to 12 counters on the Midnight Clock. And obviously the really powerful thing about Atraxa is the body is like a must-kill threat, right? If we start swinging with a 7/7 flying Vigilance creature with lifelink, it's so hard for them to beat that. But if they go for the throw it or something, first of all, we immediately get an oil counter on the Vat of Rebirth, and we can just keep looping it from the graveyard over and over again, which is, you know, the really, really powerful thing in this deck about Vat of Rebirth and Atraxa is it puts the opponent in a really awkward spot where we refuel once the Atraxa enters play, and then if they do choose to kill it, we can almost always just bring it back immediately the next turn anyway, because they get 1 oil counter from killing it, and we usually have a bunch of stuff lying around if we've refueled our hand from the Atraxa anyway, so it's pretty easy to just, you know, sack a couple treasure tokens, bring the Atraxa back again, and then the opponent has to kill it, and we get to refuel again. So I definitely feel like the mid-range matchups are a lot better with this particular build. Okay, nice. Another Fable off the top's pretty good here. Gonna scry here, and I think we can bottom a land. You know, if I didn't have Fables as a way to smooth our hand out, then I would potentially want to be keeping the 4th land, the extra land. But we've already got 4, so I don't think at this point we really need anything extra. Okay, so opponent leads on Fable. Slightly more annoying than Crucius because they get, you know, they still get the loot and the reflection, but we get to resolve a Fable of our own. Get to pitch the Atraxa into the graveyard for if we draw a Vat of Rebirth. Yeah, we'll see what the opponent does here. Okay, they pitch a land. Okay, they do have the Shielded. I mean, thankfully we have the Go for the Throat here as an immediate answer. And we can also attack and just play the second Fable here, which is pretty sick. Ooh, okay, we draw Crucius. That's pretty nice. So again, I think I want to keep lands here because, you know, we do want to keep curving out, and even if we do keep drawing lands, we can just pitch them to the Crucius here anyway, or the Fable if we play that. Going to play Crucius here while the opponent doesn't have mana open for removal, and definitely go for Greater. Okay, go for the Throat's nice. So now we have, you know, if they have another Shieldred, we have the answer, and we also have it as an answer to the Reflection as well, which is pretty nice. Okay, particularly now that they've got Corpse Appraiser. Okay, them getting rid of the Atraxa is pretty annoying because now if we get Vat of Rebirth, we don't have that as like a bomb target for it, but... Okay, so opponent hits 2 lands, so they're basically forced to get whatever other card they picked there. Okay, they do abrade the Crucius, which is a little bit annoying. So we have to kill the Reflection here, otherwise they can just start copying the Corpse Appraiser, which is really annoying. And then... I think we're just going to run out the land in the Fable. You know, we could have used the treasure token there, but we don't really want to attack with the 2/2, and I want to keep this treasure token around to trigger Anvil next turn. And I just want to get the Fable in play to, you know, start getting the advantage from it as early as possible. Okay, so opponent plays Bloodtithe Harvester. Okay, and they do have an Abrade for the Reflection, which is fine, I think. Well, they attack with the Corpse Appraiser. I mean, I'm pretty happy to double block here. If they've got a removal spell, I'm happy for them to use that now rather than on the Reflection. Okay, that's fine. So, trade a 2/2 for a 3/3. I mean, there is something to be said about maybe keeping the 2/2s around to produce more treasures. You know, I could see an argument to just letting that damage through and attacking with both 2/2s here to get a bunch of mana, but, you know, in this spot we don't really need any more mana. We already have 5 lands, and, you know, now we got 2 treasures. We didn't really need that 3rd treasure. And Corpse Appraiser can be an issue if they find an extra reflection of their own. So just going to play out the Anvil here and sack. We could have potentially, you know, cracked the Sokenzan to get in for additional damage, but I want to hold on to this just in case we draw a Crucius off the top. And to be honest, I also want to kind of surprise them in combat here as well, because that Harvester can be used to kill my reflection once it flips. Whereas going for the Sokenzan here, you know, trading with the Harvester when they don't expect it means that they no longer have a clean out to reflection once it flips. So they could have a removal spell, and it's really important to kill the Harvester. So I'm going to triple block here. Now, that could be a mistake if they have a removal spell for the 2/2. Actually, thinking about it, yeah, that was definitely a mistake. Yeah, okay. So they have another Harvester. So that was stupid of me, because my thought there was I don't want to get blown out by a removal spell and have them keep the Harvester around. But if they have a removal spell, that's a removal spell that they're not using on the reflection, and now we don't have a way to keep triggering the Anvil. So yeah, I think that was a mistake on my part. I should have just blocked with the Sokenzan tokens. Wow, they're not killing the reflection. I mean, I'm pretty happy to see that, because now Harvester off the top is so good. Right, if we draw a Harvester now, we can just start killing their stuff. Okay, that's not a bad one. We get to play the Fable, and we can copy it, get a treasure immediately, and get the Anvil back online. So yeah, thinking about it. Although I don't know if they had the Otawara, right? Like, I'm talking about the block I made a few turns ago. If they had the Otawara and we just double block, they probably bounce one of the tokens with Otawara, and then they still have a Harvester in play that would have been able to kill the reflection anyway. So I'm not 100% sure whether that was the right play or not. I'll have to go back and watch the match afterwards. But yeah, either way, like, even though the opponent does have Crucius and Harvester here, I don't mind my spot, because we got a second Fable. We've now got Anvil back online again. Now, I think the opponent might be forced to... Oh, okay, they just Brotherhood's End. I mean, I'm surprised they didn't crack the Harvester first. Maybe they feel like they need to start applying pressure here. I'm definitely going to... Actually, I was going to say I'm definitely blocking the Harvester here. I think I still want to, in case they draw like another Blood Token Generator to kill the reflection. Definitely going to pitch both the lands here. I mean, we're getting towards a point where we can just start potentially copying reflection with reflection, right, once this Fable flips. So there is potentially an argument here to playing out the Blackleaf Cliffs so that we can make an extra copy of reflection during the opponent's next end step. But I also kind of want to hold on to it in case we draw a Crucius here as well. Okay, so opponent draws a Crossroads and Scries. Okay, Scries to the top. That's a bit concerning. Okay, interesting. So we draw a Brushstroke. I'm going to run out the Brushstroke here, and then I think I'm just going to pass and copy reflection twice. And now we've got the Blood Artist. If the opponent doesn't have anything good here, we can just copy... Oh, wow, they extract the Truth. I guess that would have killed the reflection had we not drawn... the Brushstroke here. But now I think we can just make a bunch of copies of the Blood Artist. And then we're going to sacrifice a ton of stuff during the end step. So I think this should be good enough for lethal. I just need to make sure that I stack my triggers correctly. So I'm going to turn off auto-order triggered abilities here, because we want the copies of reflection to sacrifice first so that we maximize the amount of damage that we get off the Blood Artists here. So I need to make sure to put... Oh, wow, wait. This is so confusing. I can't actually see which trigger relates to which... one. Okay, so that looks like it's for the reflection. Basically, we want the reflections to be sacrificed first. I mean, I think it shouldn't really matter here because we have so many triggers, but it's kind of annoying that it's really hard to see which trigger relates to which reflection trigger, if that makes sense. Like, you can't really see which creature's being sacked. Oh, wait, I messed up the triggers. So again, yeah, what I wanted to happen was both reflections be sacrificed first. Again, I don't think it should matter in this spot, but I can definitely see a spot where that sort of thing would matter. But yeah, either way, we've definitely got more than enough to drain the opponent out here. So yeah, we got there. Nice. Okay, so we're on the play here. And I can't keep a one-lander, unfortunately. This hand looks a lot better, though.
Interesting what we want to put back here, though. I definitely want to keep the Vat and the 3 lands and at least 1 Fable, so I'm not sure whether to put back an Anvil or a Fable. I think I'm going to keep both the Fables here. You know, on the play, going Fable into Fable is really sick. The 2/2s creating treasures is great for the Vat, so even though Anvil is obviously really good, we don't have a way to get it online super quickly, so I think I prefer both Fables, and they're also just going to be good at smoothing our draws out here as well. So playing the Vat on 1, and then we'll see what the opponent's up to. But yeah, I mean, I could definitely see an argument to putting back the second Fable because it does, you know, it does allow us to curve out slightly better. We can play the Anvil on 1. I mean, drawing Crossroads here is fairly decent because we at least get something to do here with our mana. Ooh, okay, Crucius is an interesting one. So now if the opponent taps out for something here, I'm very happy to go Crucius, discard a Fable to tutor for an Atraxa. Okay, they do tap out for a Harvester, so definitely going to slam the Crucius here. And the nice thing about this setup is even if the opponent kills the Crucius, we still have the Fable here as a discard outlet for the Atraxa, and them killing the Crucius also puts our, a counter on Vat of Rebirth for us as well. So we'll see what the opponent does here. Okay, second Harvester, so that does enable them to kill the Crucius with their first Harvester here. Which looks what they're going to do here, yeah, okay. So we get the first oil counter on the Vat, and then just going to slam the Fable next turn. We just want to get Atraxa into the graveyard as early as possible, and then if we can potentially attack with the 2/2 off Fable, we can get another treasure token. Okay, Forsaken Crossroads is nice because that allows us to be efficient with our mana. So going to name Black and Scry here to try and, you know, set up our draws for the next few turns. Okay, definitely don't want another land here. So going to play the Fable, and then most likely going to pitch both the Atraxa and the land here. But yeah, having the 2/2 here in addition to the looting effect is really nice. Now, it would be kind of problematic if the opponent has a way to kill the Fable here, but if they're just playing Rakdos or even Grixis, I don't think they have a good way to do it. You know, Invoke Despair is the only main way they have of doing it, and they don't have enough mana for that yet, obviously. So now there is a chance the opponent could kill the 2/2 here with the Harvester, which would mean we don't have quite enough stuff to trigger the Vat of Rebirth immediately. If they attack with the Harvester here, then I'll be very happy about that. Wow, they're choosing not to, okay, they choose not to activate the Harvester, which makes sense because they probably think that we probably won't attack into Crucius. Wow, okay. They discard Shieldred, naming Ambitious, so that probably means that they either, I guess they probably want to find Invoke Despair. Since we didn't draw an additional land, I'm actually just going to pitch the Atraxa here. And now we can attack with the 2/2, and if they block, we can immediately bring back the Atraxa. If they don't, then we still have enough mana to bring back the Atraxa by playing the... Actually, no, wait, we don't have quite enough to play to bring back the Atraxa off the Brushstroke, but since they have blocked, we can now just crack 2 of the treasure tokens here, pump that mana into the Atraxa. The only way they could stop this is with a Braid, which they could potentially have. You know, if they're slow rolling the Abrade, they've played pretty well here. It doesn't look like they do, though. So now we can just bring back the Atraxa. And that's going to be really hard for them to beat. You know, even with Invoke Despair, I don't think they're going to have a way to stop this, really, because we can... You know, we've already got Brushstroke in hand, so we can, you know... It won't make us sacrifice the Atraxa if that is what they have. Going to get Crucius and an Anvil here. I don't think you ever really need to get a second Atraxa unless that's the only option that you've got, because... so I'm just trying to think what else to play there. But yeah, because if they do kill the Atraxa, you know, they kind of have to kill it or you're just going to win by attacking with this massive creature. And if they don't kill it, you just attack. If they do kill it, you can just bring it back. So here we get to activate the Crucius. Now we've got a second body in play, so if they did tutor up the Invoke Despair, we can just sack the Crucius instead, or we could choose to sacrifice the Atraxa here to just bring it back the following turn, but... So there is a decision to be made here. I think, you know, as good as Crucius is, I don't think, you know, at least doing it this way, we basically force the opponent to have to find an answer for the Atraxa, and then if they eventually do, we can just bring it back almost straight away anyway. And additionally, you know, we could just use the Vat to bring back the Crucius anyway, right? While they attack. So I assume we're just definitely going to snap off a block here, because I assume they then crack the Harvester to kill the Atraxa here, but we can then just bring it back again next turn, right? Because we have the Onicult Anvil. So unless they have a piece of Graveyard Hate here for like 1 mana, they'd need like Rotten Reunion or something, which obviously Rakdos is never going to main deck. So Get to play the Anvil here, then we can crack the treasure token to produce a black mana, sacrifice the Anvil token to the Anvil to get that 4th oil counter on, and then we can just bring back the Atraxa again. So yeah, even though the opponent had to jump through a lot of hoops to kill the Atraxa there, we can just get it back almost immediately, which is so strong. So then we get Vat of Rebirth, we get Atraxa back. And then we'll see what we hit off the trigger here. Okay, only 3, so that was a bit of a rough hit, but I mean, saying only 3 when we've already got like 7 cards off this Atraxa. So interesting what we want to play here. I mean, maybe this is greedy. Maybe we're supposed to hold open removal here in case they have like another Crucius or something, but if they don't have a creature play here, actually, yeah, thinking about it, maybe it's better to just hold open removal, but the only thing that really punishes us for not doing that is Crucius. Okay, they got another Invoke Despair, but again, we'll just be able to bring back the Atraxa again. So we get the Vat of Rebirth onto 1 oil counter, then we can just play the Brushstroke, sacrifice the blood token to the Anvil, or we could just loot, actually. That's maybe better. So we could, or I'm not sure actually. I think looting is, actually yeah, looting is the only way that we can get 4 oil counters on this turn. So we loot away the land here, produce 2 tokens off the Anvil, then we can just activate each of the Anvils here. Okay, another Vat of Rebirth, sure. But yeah, just activate the Anvil twice. And we're starting to drain the opponent out because of the Blood Artist here as well. So then we'll activate the second Anvil here, put them down to 11, and then we can just activate the Vat of Rebirth to get our 3rd Atraxa trigger, which is pretty insane. So we'll just bring back the Atraxa here, see what we get off this trigger. Okay, we get another land, get a Go for the Throat, pick a Crucius, and a Vat of Rebirth as well. So now, unfortunately, we're going to have to discard to hand size, but, I mean, this isn't going to match at all. We're so far ahead now. Even though the opponent had, like, a pretty good start and, like, double Invoke, Despair, Crucius, and Bloodtithe Harvester, it's not even close to enough because we've got Vat online. Wow, an extra Invoke Despair, but again, I just don't think it's going to matter here, right? So we put them down to 9 off the Blood Artist. We can attack them down to 2 off the Atraxa. And then we can just activate the Anvils twice to finish them off. I mean, just in case the opponent does have something weird, I'm going to go for Crucius first. And then Fable. And then we can just, like, you know, go to end step, pitch the Vat of Rebirth, and then just activate the Anvil twice. You know, just to go through the motions here. Because if the opponent wasn't, you know, if the opponent had a lot of mana open, this is the play I would go for. I mean, to be honest, I don't think Rakdos has any way to gain life at instant speed, but it's always worth thinking about. Okay, yeah, sweet, we got there. Nice. Okay, so against, just looks like, actually, we didn't really get to see too much of their deck. I mean, but the only 2 things they could potentially be on from what we've seen are Rakdos Midrange or Rakdos Anvil, both of which I don't really sideboard against. If this version of the deck becomes more popular, then I could potentially see bringing in maybe 1 Unlicensed Hearse as well, just as an additional way to hate out that. But even then, I'm not sure that's necessary when you have 3 Abrade in the main deck. And then if they're running Rakdos Midrange, I don't sideboard either. If they're running Grixis and they haven't, you know, they didn't find a blue land, for example, then again, I wouldn't really sideboard. Like I said, the only mid-range deck where I ever really sideboard is against Jundary Animator, just to shut off their graveyard with Unlicensed Hearse. Okay, so obviously on the draw here, see what we got in the opening hand. This is a weird one. I think I'm going to keep it though, you know, because we can go Haunted Ridge on turn 1. Turn 2, we can hold open, go for the Throat, and then we've got both Crucius and Fable on 3. Vat of Rebirth is very good in this matchup as well, so we can get that in play once we've already got Crucius or Fable online. Okay, so we drew Anvil on 2, but even if I had, the mana to cast Anvil, I would still just pass it because I want to hold open, go for the throat in case they have Crucius here. So I imagine they'll attack first to try and bait out a removal spell. Okay, we'll let the damage through here. Like I said, definitely want to just hold up, go for the throat for Crucius. Okay, so they play another Harvester here. That's fine. I'm just going to go for the throat now, just to slow them down a bit. And now the coast should be clear for us to play our own Crucius, which is, again, really sick here because we have the Vat of Rebirth, so we can instantly pitch the Fable to try and find a Atraxa. But thinking about it a little bit more, I think I'm just going to go for the Fable here, just because this is generally safer, right? The opponent has 2 blood tokens, so I could have gone for the Crucius there, but I kind of didn't clock that they had the 2 blood tokens, so they can just kill the Crucius straight away. So I'm going to go for the Fable here because it's slightly, it gets less punished by them having that Blood Tithe Harvester. Because if they attack with the Harvester here, okay, they choose not to, which is a bit annoying. If they crack the Harvester here, yeah, so this is great because now they don't have, okay, I thought they were going to crack it. So that's a bit unfortunate. I was hoping that they would either attack or crack the Blood Tithe Harvester so they can't just kill this Crucius straight away when we play it. Okay, interesting. So we've got quite a few options here. I think I'm going to go for Crucius now, or I don't know. We'll go for the Vat of Rebirth first. Actually, I mean, them having that Blood Tithe Harvester as a way to immediately kill the Crucius is kind of frustrating. Either way, I think I'm going to go for the Vat of Rebirth first here. And then I think I'm going to go for the Crucius here. I mean, maybe it was a mistake to go for Fable before Crucius, because I would kind of like to go Crucius, pitch the Brushstroke to find an Atraxa, and then we could use Fable to loot the Atraxa into the graveyard, even if the opponent has removal for the Crucius. But they'd also have the Blood Tithe Harvester now, so I'm not even sure that that's the best line to go for. And to be honest, having double Anvil Brushstroke, we can probably just lean on the draining the opponent out game plan here. Okay, so they attack with both now, which does enable us to block the Harvester potentially if we want to. But yeah, that last turn was interesting. I'm going to have to go back and watch the game and think about the different options that I had there. But yeah, definitely going to block the Harvester here. Gets another counter on the Vat of Rebirth. And that also means that they don't have Harvester about to be able to kill the Reflection. Okay, another Trespasser. So got our graveyard on lock right now, but it is all sorcery speed, right? So if we can figure out a way to get stuff in the graveyard to reanimate at instant speed, that's going to be difficult for them to stop. Okay, another land here is very nice because that enables us to potentially play Harvester, the Oniko Anvil and Brushstroke in the same turn. And then I think at this point we've got enough mana. I'm just going to sacrifice the treasure token, and then we could potentially use the blood token later to loot. And the other nice thing here is because the Trespassers are sorcery speed, we can actually block with the Blood Artist and just bring it back immediately with the Vat of Rebirth here. They don't have a good way to stop that because the Trespasser triggers are on attack. So like I said, we can just double block here, then get back the Blood Artist next turn. Okay, they do have Shieldred, which is a bit of a concern. We don't have a clean way to kill that, but we do have, like I said, we've got Blood Artist and Anvil. We've got a second Anvil in hand as well. And it doesn't look like the opponent has a way to kill the Reflection here either. So I think I'm just going to double block here. Because like I said, this will make the Vat of Rebirth go up to 5 counters. We can just use it to immediately get back the Blood Artist from the graveyard, which is obviously really sick. And then we can start copying the Blood Artist with Reflection. So we'll draw here, which puts us down to 11 off the Shieldred trigger. We can also look at potentially copying the Oniko Anvil with the Mycosynth Gardens next turn as well, if we don't draw anything great. So we get the Blood Artist. I'm going to play the land out because we want to be able to copy the Blood Artist here. Just as an additional blocker. And then I think we'll pass the turn. There is potentially an argument to setting a stop during my end step and copying the Blood Artist then to stop them killing it in response, but okay, they choose to attack with everything. I mean, again, we can just block with the Blood Artist again, right? We can make a copy of the Blood Artist, block with the copy and the actual Blood Artist, and then just bring back the Blood Artist from the graveyard again, because we're going to get enough oil counters on the vat. And then the nice thing about that is that we can block with all the creatures and still keep... Sorry, we can block all of their attackers and still keep an artifact token around to just keep triggering the Anvil without having to, sacrifice anything else. So, gonna sacrifice the token that we chump block with both the Blood Artists here. Then they'll both die, but we can, like I said, we can just bring back the Blood Artist with the Vat of Rebirth. So, even without Atraxa, the Vat of Rebirth is just putting in work here. So we put them down to 13. That does go to Knight, which means that they transform into 4/4s. But again, we've just got chump blockers for days at the moment. So we can make a copy of the Only Cult Anvil, but I don't really think that's worth it because we kind of want to... copy the Blood Artist with the Reflection. Actually, wait, that was a mistake on my part. I should have attacked with the 1/1 token first there. That was my bad. So yeah, I should have definitely attacked with the 1/1 because that 1 damage could end up mattering. Now I'm going to start copying the Blood Artist during my end step so that even if they draw a removal spell off the top, they can't stop us making a copy immediately. Okay, they duress us. I mean, I might as well fire this off against the Shieldred, right? Then that might stop them attacking with it, which means that we could potentially keep an extra 1/1 token around. They choose not to attack, which I guess makes sense. So maybe we should wait until their end step now so that we get to keep the Blood Artist during both turns, if that makes sense. I mean, since we drew a land, we're definitely going to make a copy of the Anvil here, so we've got another one going. And then I think I'm still going to make a copy during the end step here just because I don't want them to break up this loop that we're doing with the Reflection if they draw a Blood Artist off the top. And then I'm going to wait until we've got the Blood Artist in play. Plus, doing this gets us an additional trigger off the Anvil activation as well. So now we get 3 tokens in play because of the Mycosynth Garden's copy. And even though they've got Shielded Double Trespasser, I don't think they're going to be able to break past this, to be honest. So they are going to gain a lot of life off the Fable Chapter 2 next turn, but I think we can potentially kill the opponent before it gets to that point. Actually, thinking about it, I probably should have activated the Anvil there. That was my bad. Because that would have gained us an additional 3 triggers. So I'm going to activate the Anvil first here. And then we can get a Crucius trigger. And opponent's just dead on the stack here, right? I mean, actually, thinking about it, I should have done this during my turn. Sorry, I got a bit distracted there. So, yeah, I definitely should have done this during my turn. I don't know why I didn't. Yeah, we had them lethal on board. We should have just made a copy of the Blood Artist. And additionally, I should have activated the Anvil during the end of the opponent's turn for additional damage as well. I mean, hopefully it shouldn't end up mattering, but yeah, I should have clocked this slightly earlier. That was my bad. But yeah, either way, we got there. That was pretty sick. Okay, so we're going second here. And I mean, I don't think we can keep this. Too many lands, and we don't have a way to turn on the Anvil either. Okay, this is a lot better. And I think I want to keep the I think I want to keep the 3 lands, the Vat, the Go for the Throat, and the Crucius here. It was kind of close between maybe putting back the Vat instead of the Brushstroke, but I think I'm pretty happy. Crucius can kind of enable the Vat on its own in a lot of situations, so going to run out of the Vat on turn 1 here, and then most likely want to hold open Go for the Throat next turn, and then we can just play Crucius the turn after. Oh wow, okay, Rahilda. So we're going to have to kill that straight away, right? If we pass, then it goes to Knight, which is definitely an issue if the opponent's playing specifically a Werewolves deck. So looks like the opponent's on aggro, so I'm going to play the Crossroads here instead of the Sock and Zan. First of all, because it means that we don't take life off the Sulphurous Springs, which could definitely matter. And second of all, because there's a chance that we might... Oh no, I was going to say there's a chance that we might use the Sock and Zan to channel later. Opponent having Revels is very annoying here because... Oh, we hit the Atraxa though. That's pretty sick. Yeah, Revels is difficult for us to beat. I mean, it's not as bad as it is with the life gain deck because that can really go over the top. Thankfully, we hit the Atraxa here, which is huge though, because now if they don't kill the Crucius here, we actually have a way to just go over the top of what the opponent's doing, which is really sick. They do get to attack him with the Rahilda here though. Crucius is so important. We're definitely not going to block because we need, you know, we want to pitch the Atraxa. Oh, they hit a go for the throat. Yikes. That's a very good hit for the opponent. So, hopefully we can go over the top. You know, one of the big issues, I'm just trying to think whether killing the Rahilda will stop them getting the go for the throat for the attack in future. It doesn't look like it will. But yeah, either way, I mean, I think previous versions of Anvil would really struggle to beat Revels in general. Whereas now we've got Atraxa, I actually think we have a pretty good shot of just going over the top of Revels, which is pretty insane thinking about it, because Revels is such a sick card. I mean, thankfully, like I said, they're not going as big as the life gain deck, where they just, you know, have Voice of the Blessed, which can get insanely big, and then, you know, they've got stuff that allows them to play off the top a lot of the time. Okay, they hit Helana and Elena, which we're definitely going to go for the throat as a priority here, because we don't want them putting a bunch of counters on stuff. Plus, it will enter with additional +1/+1 counters because of the Tenacious Pup. So yeah, definitely kill the Helana and Elena before they start getting a bunch of buffs on everything. And then, yeah, they target the Rahilda again. So, I mean, they didn't get access to the go for the throat. Again, I think I'm going to let them hit me because we can use the Harvester to kill the Rahilda. Okay, they hit Vat of Rebirth, that's fine. They're very, you know, I'd be very surprised if they do anything with that. So now we can actually just reanimate the Atraxa this turn, right? We can crack the Blood Tithe Harvester to kill the Rahilda. Then we can crack the Blood Token to loot away the Vat of Rebirth. Or the Crucius, actually. I'm not sure which is best. Probably the Vat. I mean, we don't want to get another Atraxa here, I don't think. But off the Atraxa trigger, I'm sure we're going to get something else better to pitch to the Crucius anyway. But yeah, either way, we get to crack both of the treasure tokens. Get back the Atraxa here. And now even with Revels in play, I think they're going to struggle. So only hitting 3 creatures is a little bit rough here, but I think it's going to be very hard for them to beat a 7/7. Okay, so interesting whether we want to play the Harvester or hold open a Braid here. I guess we could do both if we play the Swamp. But yeah, actually thinking about it, that probably would have been better. I probably should have played the Swamp and the Harvester. And then, yeah, I forgot that I was going to switch tonight. So, yeah, that was my bad. I should have gone for Swamp into Harvester. Okay, another Revels. That's fine. So they don't get to trigger the Revels this turn, which is pretty huge. But, yeah, I don't think it should really matter the play last turn because we can just play... you know, we could play Fable and Harvester this turn to potentially switch it back to today if we really wanted. Which I think is the play here, you know. Get to play both, get to discard one of these Cruciuses to get the second treasure, and then we have a Braid back online again. But yeah, thinking about it, I definitely should have gone Swamp, Harvester last turn. I was just playing a little bit too quickly. And now we've still got a Braid up here to kill the Stormseeker if they try to give something else haste. Okay, they got another Stormseeker, so hopefully they don't get too many good hits off the Revels. Okay, there's a Tenacious Pup. And yeah, since their deck just isn't going anywhere near as big as the Naya version, I don't think they're going to be able to beat Atraxa. So I think I'm happy to just fire off the Abrade here. Maybe it's best to hold on to in case they draw like a Tovolar or something, but I feel like we're pretty well equipped to beat that anyway. And doing this enables us to get more counters on the Vat, which enables us to potentially reanimate something else next turn. You know, just for value. So now we get Chapter 2 of Fable. We can loot away Crucius and Sulphurous Springs. Oh, okay. I mean, Brushstroke is really nice here because that really increases our clock in terms of being able to kill the opponent here, which is pretty huge. So I think I'm just going to crack the Harvester to kill the Stormseeker. Now, again, you know, there could be more dangerous threats they get, but this just stops giving their stuff haste and starts putting pressure on their life total off the Blood Artist. I think I'm happy to attack with the 2/2 as well, because if they do double block, we're still going to get them with triggers off the Blood Artist. We're going to get more counters on the Vat of Rebirth, which enables us to reanimate something else next turn. And they basically need a reach creature here. Oh no, wait, we can put them down. We can just win the game this turn then, right? So that puts them down to 3. And then we can just crack this last blood token to finish the opponent off. So yeah, that was a pretty sick turn. And we managed to beat 2 Revels. You know, I think the old Anvil deck would have struggled against that sort of start. Now this is interesting because against aggro, I normally board out for Atraxa and 2 Vat of Rebirth and bring in Voltage Surge and Grixis command. But since the opponent's on Revels, I'm kind of tempted to just keep the main deck as it is and kind of rely on Atraxa again. Because I do feel like they're not running the fastest aggro deck in the format, right? You know, I'm not as worried as I would be against something like Mono Red Aggro or Mono Red Goblins. Because they generally go taller rather than wider. Their creatures are a bit more expensive and a bit bigger. So I think that gives us enough time to keep Atraxa in. And I think if they do have Revels, we kind of need Atraxa to be able to go over the top of that. So typically against the low to the ground aggro decks, I'm definitely much more of a fan of cutting Atraxa because it's a little bit too slow. But since the opponent is playing a slightly slower creature deck anyway, I think I'm just going to run it back. Okay, I think I want to keep the extra land here, you know. We do want to keep curving out. We do want to be playing multiple spells in the turn if we can. Okay, the Outline Liberator's kind of annoying. I think we just have to abrade that straight away because it will just go to night otherwise, which we don't want in general. And we would want to kill this Liberator anyway because, you know, it can kill Brushstroke, it can kill Vat, it can kill Fable, it can kill Anvil, obviously. Okay, so they go for Stormseeker. Oh, okay, that's a good draw. I was going to say I'm not 100% sure whether I go for a Braid or Harvester here, but now we've drawn Crucius, definitely going to go for that. Get to pitch the Atraxa, so now if we draw a Vat, we're in a really good spot. Okay, opponent plays Arlen, which is a bit concerning because we don't have great ways to attack down Planeswalkers. You know, I did consider Shieldred's Edict in the sideboard, but I just didn't feel like it was high impact enough. Okay, interesting spot here. So I don't mind playing Brushstroke and attacking here. We can play an untapped land, we can play the Brushstroke and attack, and if the opponent does double block the Crucius, we can just abrade the Stormseeker here, which is pretty good for us. You know, get to take out 2 creatures, get 2 Blood Artist triggers as well. If they don't block, we kill the Arlen. If they block with just 1, we get to get a free creature anyway. So they do double block, which makes sense. We can just abrade the Stormseeker here, get 2 Blood Artist triggers, blow them out in combat. And the second Brushstroke in hand is pretty nice here, to be honest, you know, because it can be kind of annoying trying to attack into Arlen if the opponent has open mana, because they can plus and play creatures at instant speed, which means they can very easily blow us out in combat if we're attacking with the Crucius now. So having the second Brushstroke means that we can potentially just win without needing to attack. Okay, so it does go back to night because they're going to be playing stuff at instant speed. Thankfully, we can go Brushstroke and Blood-Tithe Harvester here, which is pretty nice. And then we've got Harvester as potentially a removal spell for whatever they do play this turn. And we're getting a bunch of extra blood tokens, which, you know, we can potentially just finish the opponent off by cracking a bunch of our blood tokens here anyway, right? We've got 2 Brushstrokes in play, which means every blood token is going to be dealing 2 damage. Okay, so we're at the end step. I imagine the opponent plays some creatures here. Okay, they play Rahilda, which is a bit of a concern. Thankfully, it changes back to day, so they only, you know, it's only first strike rather than double strike. So if they do attack with the Rahilda, I think I'm probably going to let it through here because we kind of want to use the Harvester as a removal spell. We don't really want to lose either of the Blood Artists or the Crucius here. So I imagine they do attack with the Rahilda. And just got to hope that they don't hit anything too good off the trigger here. So we'll see what they hit. Okay, Atraxa, yeah, they're so far away from being able to cast that. So they pass back, goes back to night again. Interesting options here. I think I don't mind leading on the Anvil, and then we can crack the Harvester here, which will kill the Rahilda and get us 4 Blood Artist triggers. And then we can play the Harvester, which will trigger the Anvil to get us a token. And then assuming they don't have a removal spell for Crucius, we also get to pitch this land for something better as well, which is pretty sick. And now we've got this extra Blood-Tithe Harvester. We're representing 8 damage off the blood tokens alone here, right? So if we can get the opponent down to 8, we can just finish them off by cracking all of our blood tokens here. Okay, we hit another Crucius, which obviously isn't ideal. Okay, opponent plays another Rahilda, but thankfully we've got Anvil online now, so we can just chump block Rahilda with the Anvil token. So they can't keep getting in with the Rahilda, which is pretty nice, because if they hit something like a go for the throat and they kill the Blood Artist, that could shut off our ability to drain the opponent out. So being able to just chump block Rahilda every turn is pretty sick here. Okay, so they just attack with the Rahilda. Definitely going to chump with the Anvil token here, and then we get to essentially deal them 3 damage off the Blood Artist triggers and the Anvil here. Puts them down to 11. And then we'll see what else they do. I imagine they just pass again if they've got creatures in hand, right? Because they've plussed the Arlinn, so they can just play creatures at instant speed. Now, there is something to be said. I could have potentially cracked a blood token there, but I'm kind of glad I didn't because we hit the VAT here. I mean, I don't think it should end up mattering, right? Because we should just be able to win this turn regardless. You know, we can crack the Harvester to kill the Rahilda. We can, you know, crack a blood token, crack all the blood tokens, which deals 8. Then we get an additional Only Cult Anvil token, which we can just sack to the Anvil, which should be good enough to win as well. I mean, we already put them below 8, so we can just crack all of our blood tokens here and win the game. And I very much doubt they've got anything. I guess they could have... I forgot what it's called. That 1 drop that gains them 2 life when it enters the battlefield. They could flash that in, but... I mean, we have way more than lethal here, right? So even if they have, like, 1 or 2 of those, I think we should be able to beat that. Because we can activate the Anvil at instant speed, which represents, 3 extra damage as well. Not to mention the fact that we've also got the Vat of Rebirth on here. But yeah, this should be good enough to win, right? Puts them down to 1. Even if they have... even if they gain 2 life back, we can just sacrifice the Anvil token to deal an extra 3 damage as well. So yeah, if they have that 1 drop, they have to play it now. Oh, sweet, we got there. Nice. Sick. And we're rank 1 again. Love to see it.